Hello, everyone. Everybody say hi, Corey.
Hi, Corey.
Thank you. I'm so delighted to have so many people here. This is a great turnout, and I want to welcome everyone to this storytelling showcase. This is the culmination of a 5-week workshop. I've been working with these 6 storytellers on developing, structuring, and finally performing their stories. So tonight you're going to hear the outcome of that. These storytellers represent a wonderful wide range of experience. Some people are very experienced storytellers. Some have not told that many stories, at least publicly. I mean, we're all storytellers. We all tell stories in our lives, to our friends, to our families. And so what this workshop really focused on was crafting those stories, was kind of mining our lives, finding good content, and then really finding ways to structure, shape, and then ultimately perform and tell those stories. And I know that you've got a great show ahead of you and some wonderful stories. So I want to give my appreciation to all of you for coming, supporting your friends or your family, or maybe just you happened upon this show, and I appreciate you for being here. Great. There is no sponsor of the show tonight, so I don't have to thank any sponsors, except I will make a self congratulatory thing. I wrote a book, and it's coming out next month. Yay me! And it's called Your Story Well Told, and it's been a long time coming, and I'm super excited about it. If you are interested in the book or information about it, to find out, just go to my website. You will see by pointing to my name, CoreyRosen.com is my name. You can find out about that. That is our sponsor for tonight, is me in my book. And before we begin, I was going to tell my own short story about a time that I was on the other side. I'm sitting in the back seat of a taxi. No, I already messed up my story. I'm starting over. I'm sitting in the back seat of a police car, and I know that today is either the best or the worst day of my life. 1 week earlier, I am at the Chinese embassy in San Francisco because the visa that I need to get to China today is expired. I arrived at the airport this morning and discovered that they would not let me on the Air China flight to Beijing for the very important meeting that I have in 48 hours because I have an expired Chinese visa. And this is very frustrating and confusing to me because the meeting that I'm going to seems like the most important thing in the world. So at the Chinese embassy, I hasten the process, and within 1 day, I get my visa, but it's not enough time to get to China on the flight to China that day from San Francisco, unless I fly to Los Angeles International and take the LA overnight flight from LA to Beijing, which I get on, and I make the day and I make the presentation, and it goes fine. Fine, not amazing, not terrible, just fine. And when I make it back, I wonder, what was the big deal with this entire thing and all the stress that I put myself through? And I go to the gym the morning that I get back from this long ordeal of a trip and the stresses of visas and international travel. And I put my stuff in my locker and I go to the treadmill and I come back to find my locker wide open and everything gone. And when I say everything, I mean almost everything. Because one time I was robbed at a gym and they stole everything. And by everything, I meant my pants. Yes, my pants were gone. And I was at a gym, not just a gym, I was at a swimming pool called The Plunge in Richmond, California. And it's very difficult to go back to work wearing your bathing suit, but that's what I had to do for the rest of the day. So actually the first thought in my head as I saw my wide open locker was, at least they didn't take my pants. So I rush out of the locker room. Actually, I put my pants on. I put my pants on and I rush out of the locker room and I say, somebody stole my stuff. And the people at the desk of the 24-hour fitness in Berkeley, California, didn't seem that confused or concerned about my problem, but I was. So I got on a telephone of theirs because they took my things, my cell phone and my wallet and my passport that had the brand new visa, which of all the things that were missing, this was the thing that was actually the most confusing and frustrating to me, was this visa that I labored, that I went to the embassy, that I flew to China for, is now gone, as is about this much in Chinese currency, which I can see by my own fingers seems like a lot. it was about $60. So it wasn't really that much, but it might have seemed to the person who got the stuff like a bounty, and boy, would they be disappointed. But I called my wife first to say my car keys, my cell phone, my wallet, everything was taken. And my wife was smarter than me, goes onto the website of Find My iPhone or whatever it's called, and she says, he's right outside. And she sees him at the BART station right on the corner of University and Shattuck or wherever the 24, it's right Berkeley Rep, whatever that corner is. So I am not stupid. So I say, I will call the police. I am not going to chase down this perpetrator. My brother, by the way, chased a perpetrator one time and got all of his things back. Somebody took his stuff. He chased after them. He said, give me my stuff. And they gave it back to him. I'm not as brave as that person either. So I called the Berkeley PD, who showed up very quickly. And I got into the back of Officer Johnson's car. And now we're driving down the street because the Officer Johnson pulls up Find My iPhone on his phone. And now we are tracking my stuff using this amazing technology down the 580 heading down towards Fremont, California. I got to say, this is the first time I've ever sat in the back of a police car, and I was having kind of a good time. I mean, I know that this was a negative experience and I shouldn't have been enjoying this, but I was actually having kind of a good time, in part because of the adventure of the whole thing, and also in part because Officer Johnson and I found that we had something in common. We both like musical theater, and we started singing. He had recently played Lieutenant Brannigan in a sort of a stock production in Berkeley of Guys and Dolls. And so we're singing songs and having a lovely time until we arrive at the motel in Fremont, California, where the light was blinking. Now, in my mind, in my brain, this was going to be big, right? Because I imagine that whoever it is that stole my phone, that stole my stuff from the gym locker, they are taking it to the mastermind of all Bay Area theft. That somehow my stuff and my experience is going to bust this wide open. Every bike, every car theft, every robbery in the Bay Area is going to be solved thanks to my stuff. So he parks the car, gets out, and says, you stay here. Now, some of you may have been in the backs of police cars, but you know, it's not really this. It doesn't actually feel like the safest place to be, especially when you're parked and you can't get out of the backseat of the car because they don't open that way. And so now people are walking by and they're looking at me, the guy sitting in the car. I'm just waving, hi, and wondering what the hell is happening. 3 minutes, maybe 4 minutes go by only. And I see Lieutenant Brannigan, I almost call it, the police officer coming back, holding my everything, my fanny pack, my wallet, my car keys, my everything. He even had my Xanax. He had everything that I had lost in this thing. And he puts it on the hood of the car. I took a selfie with the officer, and I knew as we were driving now back to San Francisco in terms of, was this going to be the best or the worst day of my life? It was probably neither. I mean, let's be honest. Like, this was an experience like any experience. But what I really took from this is the fact that all these things that I stressed, that I worried, that I fretted about a week ago, about getting the visa, about getting to China, that all of these things at the end of the day, they didn't matter. What mattered was that we were safe. What matters is that the world will go on. And sometimes we look at the things that are so pressing and important and we realize,
Hey.
It's nice. Welcome. All right, that's my story. Thank you. Okay, so great. So thank you for that. I am going to now happily, oh my gosh, we have so many people here. For those of you who have your cameras on, thank you. And go ahead and wave. It is actually really nice. I got to say, I've hosted a lot of online shows. I've performed in a lot of shows. And I know that it's fine to, like you're an audience of a show. And for you, the experience is I'm just watching a show. I don't have to turn my camera on. And that's totally understandable. But as a performer, it actually kind of feels like you're talking to nobody. So it's kind of, if you don't mind, I'm going to say, go ahead and turn your camera on so that we can see you. And if you're just, making dinner or picking your nose, then don't. That's, I'm going to say, it's totally optional. And we're going to start the show. So let me please welcome to the stage your first storyteller for tonight, Kate Collardson.
Hi. A rainbow is a promise from God. And if I can't change the meaning of the Confederate flag to mean something other than white supremacy, then you can't change the meaning of the rainbow to mean something that is a sin against God. It is in the Bible. I was surprised to see this comment on my Facebook post, but less surprised when I saw who the commenter was. This guy and I don't agree on anything. He is somebody who I grew up with. We grew up in a small town in East Texas, very conservative place. Now, I grew up in a relatively liberal family. We were very religious, and I threw myself into religion as a kid. I did youth group and Sunday school, and I was an acolyte. I was at Episcopal church, and when I went to college, when I was 14, I actually felt a calling to be a priest. And that was my path for my teenage years. That was my plan. And I got to college, and my first thing was to go to the Episcopal church that was near the campus and figure out what the youth program was, what was their college outreach. And the youth director there was sad to tell me that they didn't have a college program, but he was happy to hire me as an assistant youth director. And so I signed up, and I was a youth director. I taught Sunday school every Sunday. I did youth group. We went on mission trips. It was great. I really loved it. And then my sophomore year of college, I was in this class, and while I was in this class, this question came up, and it's a question that I had run into many times in my life, and I had asked a few people. And the question was, how do you know if you're gay? So my family had done a really good job of normalizing gay people for me, but I picked up on the overt cultural messaging that being gay was bad. And I didn't want to be gay, but somehow there was this question of, am I? And in this class, I was in a class with, it was a small group, and there was a lesbian and this gay guy in my class. And as part of the class, we went on a trip for a few days. And while we were on this trip, I made sure to find time alone with these two individuals. And I sat down with the lesbian. Her name was Des. And I said, how did you know you were gay? And she said, well, I asked that sort of question. And later on, I sat down with the gay guy named Rob, and I asked him the same question, and he started talking about growing up in a religious family and how concerned he was about what this would mean for his family, and how worried he was about what the rest of the church would think about him and his family. And it was as if he was speaking from my soul. And so the next morning we were leaving, and we're packing up, and I went out for a little walk while the rest of the group was finishing up getting packed. And I was just wrestling with this question, and I didn't know what else to do, so I prayed. And I said, God, I need a sign, and I need it now. And nothing happened. And so I walked back to the cars where everyone was getting in, and somebody said, hey, look at that. And I turned around, and in the sky was the most amazing rainbow I have ever seen. It wasn't just a rainbow, it was a double rainbow. But not only that, the main rainbow had these tiny little rainbows in the bottom stripe. It was the most incredible thing that I've ever seen. And I thought, huh. And I got into the car, Des was driving, and that rainbow followed us for the next 2 hours. After 2 hours, Des said, we've got to get out and look at this thing. And so she drove up on a ridge, and we got out of the car and we all looked at it, and it was just amazing. And as we're getting back in, Des said, y'all, I don't know what this is, but this rainbow is important to somebody. It means something to someone. It has to. And I said, I think this is the rainbow that's telling me to come out of the closet. And she said, that's right. This is Kate's rainbow. So we got back to school, and I was so excited. I came out to everyone. It was so great to finally feel comfortable in my skin. And I came out to the people at the church, and they were like, we can fix that. And so they sent me to a therapist, and the therapist listened to me for 45 minutes and said, yep, you sound pretty gay to me. And so I went back to the church, and they said that they no longer needed my services. I was devastated. I had been on this path for my whole life, and suddenly the path had vanished in front of me. And I didn't know what to do, but I figured out another path, and I went down it. And today I am not a priest, but I do live an authentic life, and I try to be my whole self, even on Facebook. And as I read the comment from my friend from growing up, I realized that we actually do agree about something. Sometimes a rainbow is a promise from God.
Kate Collardson, everyone. Keep it going. Yeah, let her see it. Yeah, you can give the visual version of your clapping. Yes. Amazing. In fact, even in between, if you want, you can also even unmute yourselves.
Bravo, bravo. Well done. Beautiful story.
Good job.
Wonderful.
Well done. Well done. Thank you.
I just want to do that all night. I just want to have people say nice things to each other. That's awesome. Thank you all. Now please mute yourselves. Okay, let us get to our next storyteller. So I would love to welcome to the stage your next storyteller, Algiin Ford. Please give it up for Algiin. Woo!
At the lowest point in my drug addiction and possibly my life, I was having a typical weekday night. It's about 1:40 a.m. and I'm armed with $5, and I'm on a mission to get to the liquor store before 2 a.m. The $5 was to buy Wonder Bread and a package of bologna, my mainstay meal. As I approach this liquor store, I'm walking down the street. I see outside the store this huge guy. I can't make out who it is. As I get closer, I recognize him. It's Big James from my neighborhood. Caramel skin, African-American, really muscular. How he was a drug addict, he didn't look like he was missing any meals. James leans into me and he says, "Hey, Al, can you help me out?" With a non-committing eye roll, I said, I go into the store. I get my Wonder Bread and my bologna. And as I walk out, I place $1.36 into Big James's big hand. He looks at me. Now, I know he's hungry, and he knows it's all the money I got. So there were really no words to be said. He thanked me. We split up. A couple of weeks later, as my addiction continued on this course, it's about 10, 11 in the morning. I've been on an all-nighter, and I'm writhing in the excruciating pain of hating myself as I sit on a green park bench at the edge of Alamo Square, surrounded by the painted ladies, all alone in the park. I squint up as I look to the left, and I see the silhouette of someone walking towards me. I didn't want to speak to anyone, so I buried my head in my hands. And as he gets closer, he stops. And he says, "Hey, Al." I look up, and it's Big James. And he says, "What are you doing sitting in the park all alone?" I said, "Man, I'm tired, Jay." He said, "You remember the other night when you helped me out?" He said, "That was cool, man. You're real people." And poof, he disappeared. Within 2 more weeks, I was arrested again. And as I was being taken to San Bruno County Jail, there was about 20 of us going under the 7th floor. And there's a long line, cells on either side, concrete benches. And I'm at the tail of the centipede, all of us in line, handcuffed to each other. But something had transpired on the bus, which I had no knowledge about. And everyone is all of a sudden seething angry. And I'm looking around, but I don't know what's going on. And as they stop the line to let the first 2 guys into the cell, another guy turns around and hits him, and a fight breaks out. And the fight breaks out, and there was a melee. And from the end of the line, I was somehow swung all the way into the center. And here I am in the center of this melee of a group of men fighting each other, and I don't know why. All of a sudden, I hear the crack of a billy club against one of the concrete benches, and the hugest guard of a group walks right up to me, seething, nose, now his nostrils flaring, panting, still flowing with adrenaline, and he turns to everyone and he says, "He started it." So everyone else is, of course, relieved because there's no consequences, and he says 2 weeks in isolation. So I'm sitting to myself, and then I'm sitting there, and maybe, I don't know, a couple more days pass, 4 or 5 days. And there I am sitting on the concrete floor with my back against the wall and the light streaming in over the top of me onto the concrete floor. And it's just simply meditating when I feel some eyes looking upon me. And I look up to my left, and there, with his face leaning against the bar, with a shit grin, is Big James. And I said, "Hey, James, how long you been here?" He says, "I saw him when they brought you in. That was some rough shit, man." I said, "Whoa." And he says, "Hey, look here, man." He slides a pack of cigarettes and some zigzags to me. Pack of tobacco and some zigzags to me. And he says, "Do you smoke?" And I go, "No." I says, "But I'm bored enough to want to figure out why." And so he says, "Hey, man, you were always good to me. If you need anything in here, I got your back." And he says, "You're real people." And poof, he's gone again. So I go back and I sit down on the floor, and I'm back's against the wall. And as my head hits the concrete, I just say, "Man, when I get out of here, I ain't never coming back." And then I almost had a little giggle. And I realized, I said, that was the best $1.36 I ever spent. See.
Algiin Ford, everybody, give it up. Go ahead and unmute yourself. Let him hear him.
All right, Al.
Yeah.
Wow.
Great story. Great story.
Beautiful. Thank you, Al, for that beautiful story. All right,
Hey.
everyone, welcome to the stage, Ellen Kaufman.
Thank you so much. Bam! I am laying on the pavement, screaming for dear life. Just a couple of seconds before that, I was crossing Lakeshore on my way to the deli to get provolone cheese. And somewhere in the middle of the crosswalk, for whatever reason, I turn to my right, I look up the street, and there's a vehicle moving really fast. I said, shit, he is not gonna stop. And I start backing up. And sure enough, this white panel truck comes barreling through the crosswalk. Big oversized mirror hits me on the forehead, knocks me back. And the next moment, another car going the other way hits my hip, throws me on the hood, throws me into the street. And there I am just screaming because I was pretty sure a third car was going to come along and finish the job. Well, I was taken to Kaiser Oakland ER with a brief detour at Merritt Hospital. And the first thing I did was call my sister, Marla, I'm here, I had an accident, bring me my checkbook. Because at that time, I was paying my own insurance premiums. I was young, I was healthy, and I had decided to go bare. That day was the last day that I could pay my premium and keep my insurance. So that was job number one, bring me the checkbook. The rest of the evening was really very long and very difficult. I had to wait to be examined, wait for the x-ray, wait for the reading the x-ray, wait for the diagnosis. And all of it was without any medication. I was in pain, but they wouldn't give me anything because they thought, yeah, they didn't think, but they knew it might get in the way of making a diagnosis. Finally, maybe 11 or 12 hours after the accident, I was taken upstairs, put into a bed, given some drugs, thank God, and it was only a fractured pelvis. Now, those are my words, only a fractured pelvis, because when I think about what the alternative was, only a fractured pelvis was a pretty good outcome for an accident like that. First thing I did the next morning was to call some executives at Kaiser. Hello, this is Ellen speaking, Ellen Kaufman. I have to tell you that I can't make my job interview today. I'm an inpatient in your hospital, and if you'd like to come see me, come on down. Well, needless to say, they never came to my hospital room. And when I did have my job interview, we spent a whole lot more time talking about my experience as an inpatient rather than my professional experience that would have qualified me for that particular job. So I stayed in the hospital for a week. I left with some crutches that I really didn't know how to use and no treatment plan, because when you have a fractured pelvis, it's something it has to repair itself. It needs time and it needs patience. And I got to admit, I wasn't really long on patience. I lived in a communal household, fortunately, so there were a lot of people around who could help me, but it was really hard to ask for that help. Norma, can you spot me in the shower? Kirsten, can you bring me some coffee? Linda, can you give me a ride? I was a really independent person, and being vulnerable and needy, oof, that was a lesson that I really needed to learn. And as time went on, there were milestones. I moved from crutches to a cane, from a cane to no cane. I was able to drive myself because I could do the clutch on my car. And within a few months, about 3 months, I emerged totally healed and thankfully with no residual problems. And when I think about my accident, I think about how, we all talk about, we'll sit around, we'll talk about the vagaries of life. And it's a cliche. Somebody will say, hey, you can never tell. You could step off a curb and get hit by a bus or a beer truck or 2 cars like I did. You never do know what life is going to throw at you. So as you make your way through life, I just want you to remember a couple of things. When you cross the street, look both ways, like your mom told you. And stay vigilant until you get to the other side. And by all means, always keep your health insurance card close at hand.
Ellen Kaufman, yes. Unmute yourselves. Let her hear it.
Good job, Ellen.
And you can remember, you can also use the chat if you want to give some love to Ellen or any of the other storytellers. Wonderful. So let us please welcome to the stage our next storyteller, John McCoy. Oh, and is that your cat or your dog just made a cameo behind?
That's Henry. Henry McLaughlin. Yes. All right. So the first time I wrote an obituary, I was neither distraught or overwhelmed by the tasks. In fact, I look forward to writing that first obituary because I was excited because it was about a rat that I found. This story all starts in 1989 when I was 8 years old. And it's a summer. And back then, during the summers, I spent all day at my grandparents' house from morning till the evening when my parents got off work. And my grandparents, they live in this really idyllic suburban community here in the East Bay, Pittsburgh, near the Black Diamond Mines. And it was this community where they first settled when they moved to the Bay Area from Arkansas. And it was one of those places that reminds me of Leave It to Beaver, where all the neighbors know each other. So for example, my grandfather's next door neighbor was his brother. The family that lived across the street and a few houses down was my grandfather's cousin. And then the next block over, my grandfather's brother and sister, they live in 2 other houses that are on that block. And in fact, my grandparents and their siblings, they all founded the church at the end of the block. And so I spent my summers just hanging out with the neighborhood kids. And my best friend at the time was this kid named Justin. And Justin was known amongst all our friends for causing the 1989 earthquake. You see, what happened was, as kids, we would ride our bikes throughout town, going through the blocks. And the thing to do when we were kids was to, instead of stopping your bike calmly, we would ride really fast, and then you'll jump off, and then your bike will fall, and you'll hit the ground with your feet and standing up. And Justin did that one day, and literally the time when his feet hit the ground, the earth started to shake. And everyone was like, Justin, you made the earth shake. But anyway, Justin and I one day were walking around the neighborhood trying to find something to do. And we come across this dead rat in the gutter, essentially. And it's clearly dead. It's on its back. There's blood coming from its jaw. The blood is kind of dry. And I'm not sure why we thought it was a good idea to bury the rat. The only thing as an adult, the only thing I can think of is that same year in 1989, Pet Sematary came out sometime in the spring. And that's a Stephen King's novel. And so Justin and I went back to our homes. We got a garden shovel, a dustpan, a broom, and we decided to pick up the rat with those tools, and we carried it all the way to the church at the end of the block, the same church where my grandparents are, on the usher board and deacons and all that stuff. And Justin and I, we dig a hole and we bury the rat. And then we go about our day. We find something else to do. But later that night, when we were inside the house because it was evening, I decided to get a piece of paper and write an obituary for the rat. And it was something along the lines of, today, Mr. Rat passed away. There was no one to watch over him. And so Justin and I carried him to the church and had a nice little service for him. The next day, I was so proud of myself for writing that obituary that I carried it around in my pocket, and I showed all the neighbors in the neighborhood. And I shared it with a neighbor named Ernestine. Ernestine was my grandfather's cousin-in-law. So she married my grandfather's cousin, who was my grandfather's best friend. And Ernestine, she was so proud of me when I shared with her that note. She was praising how well it was written, and she said, you know, you did such a good job. I'm going to get you a prize. And so then a few hours later, she comes back from the grocery store and she gives me this prize, which is a little cursive worksheet booklet. And once again, she's praising me for writing this little story about this rat. And all I can think is that I did something that someone values and is praising me for. I should do this again. I should do it more. And so I go find Justin and I tell Justin, and he's excited too. He's like, you know, someone really values this. And he even says, you know, maybe we can get on the news if we bury more rats or more animals. And so for the next day and a day or two, Justin and I spend the day walking around the neighborhood looking for all these animals that have passed away. And over the course of the day and a half, we find a toad that was clearly ran over by a car. It has track marks on the stomach. We find a duck that maybe got separated from its mother, and it was underneath a car. I actually crawled down underneath the car and pulled it out with a plastic bag. And we find a rabbit that also this was for some reason laying on the side of the road. And we did this whole process. We carried these animals with tools, not with our hands, to the church. We buried them, and then I would write a little obituary about it. Well, after the next day or two, word got around town. I'm not sure who told on us, but my grandfather, when he saw Justin and I passing by the front yard, carrying our tools, the dustpan and the shovel and the broom, he pulled us aside and he told us to come into the garage, and he set us down. And in a very stern voice, he said, "Stop picking up dead animals. You're going to get sick." And he was stern. He wasn't mean about it, but Justin and I definitely knew that he meant business. And I think he also knew that we needed something to distract us, something that we couldn't get in too much trouble with. And so that day and throughout the rest of the summer, every now and then he had us do yard work with him whenever he was cutting cutting the grass of the next door neighbor or his own. And then, you know, the summer came to the end. And I guess what I really love about that story and what makes me makes me feel good about it is that, you know, how lucky was I to be raised in this kind of, you know, free range experience as a kid, where I had a great community of people who like Ernest encouraged my creativity, but also whenever I got a little too weird, people like my grandfather who kind of reeled me in. And so I just think about, you know, that's, you know, how lucky am I to have that experience, but also to have such a, you know, delightful experience with death for the first time. Thank you.
John McCoy, go ahead and unmute yourself and let John hear it.
Hey, John.
All right, this is an old, wonderful friend of mine, and I'm so delighted to hear her story tonight. Welcome to the stage, Genevieve Franklin.
Luego, ¿qué pasó, Juanjo? And then what happened, Jan Jan? I was 4, and my brother was all of 9. And he was sitting next to me on the bed, telling me a story the way he had done every evening since I'd come home from the hospital. I would be bedridden for days on end, looking skinny and scraggly and feeling bored and tired and sick and scared. We had just moved to this country a few weeks earlier, and while my siblings learned English and the perplexities of a new culture by the method of sink or swim, I was whisked across Texas to a renowned hospital in Houston, where I had surgery and treatment for what would end up being the first of many tumors that year after year would threaten to claim my life. For some reason, it was Johnny who ended up being the storyteller during my convalescence. He would weave tales for me which would lift me out of my reality and into a marvelous world of his imagination. Night after night, I would listen in rapt attention, propped up by pillows, with my hair cut short and a big white gauze bandage covering my scars, with my arms around the stuffed rabbits, no, they were stuffed tigers, that I just would not let go of, listening to his stories. Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess. She lived in a far-off land, he began. And then he would have her wend her way across hills and fields and forests. She would encounter knights and knaves and princes and paupers. Sometimes there would be a fierce fire-breathing dragon that would charge toward the princess. And then there would be a gallant and noble and brave knight, the dragon slayer. So what happened then? Johnny echoed my question. Why, the dragon slayer appeared on his marvelous stallion and fearlessly pointing his lance. The dragon slayer scared the dragon away. And then the princess, so grateful, said, "Oh, dear knight, I want you to stay with me forever." And the knight said, "I will, but not in the way that you expect. There will come a day when you will no longer see me. But at that moment, you will have gained the strength to ward off dragons on your own." And with that, the knight took the heart-shaped tip of his silver lance and gave it to the princess with these words, "Know that we will never part every time you touch this heart." And so we continued as I turned 5 and 6 and 7 and 8. And then one day when I was 9, I asked Johnny to tell me another story. He was hedging. "Come on, Johnny," I said, "tell me another story." And he said, okay. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who wanted her brother to tell her a story. And this is the story he told. I leaned forward, tigers flying all over the covers. So excited was I to hear what happened next. He continued. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who wanted her brother to tell her a story. And this is the story he told. Go on, Johnny, get on with the story. Sure. Hang on. Once upon a time, there was a little girl who wanted her brother to tell her a story. And this is the story he told. Knock it off, John, that's not the story. And he said, Jen, it is. Once upon a time, there was a little girl. And I go, oh, I get it, John. You see, by that time, I was 9, but Johnny was 14, and there were other damsels in distress that needed rescuing. And so what happened was reality had to come into my world at last. But I was finally ready. I was strong enough for the moment. And so I bit my lip and gathered up my courage. And with these words, I let him go. Night, night, my night. Good night, princess, said he.
Genevieve Franklin, everybody.
Oh, Jenny, that was so sweet. Made brought tears to my eyes.
That's
Jenny.
John.
That's
John
me.
John is here. John is in the
Honey
audience.
Joe.
Hi, guys. That's my little sister. That's my little princess.
What a special brother you had.
Oh,
And-
yeah.
And my other brother's online too.
Tommy somewhere there. Thank you, guys.
Love you. That was a beautiful story.
I'm right.
Thank you.
Right.
Thank you, Corey.
That was
Also.
great.
You.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Beautiful.
Thank
all
you.
right.
That was beautiful.
Thank you. Thank you for that. All right. We are up to our final story of the night. So please, let me add you. Here we go. Let's welcome to the stage our final storyteller for tonight, Amos Stoltzfus.
Thanks, Corey. It's a typically overcast June morning in Oakland. And like too many other Saturday mornings, I'm a little hungover. I'm walking my dog, Zeb, short for Zebediah, to our local dog park. Zeb is a 60-pound Rottweiler Shar-Pei mix. He's got the long, rounded snout of a Shar-Pei with a bunch of extra flappy skin on his face and especially around his neck. But he has the markings of a Rottweiler, which can make him look intimidating, but Zeb is a lover, not a fighter. And he's always loved going to dog parks. On the way, we stopped by a local coffee shop to pick up a much needed cup of coffee. And as we approach the park, the fog in my head is starting to lift. And I'm glad to see that there are already 2 other dogs at the park. Zeb will have a couple of playmates as I come back to life. So we walk up to the gate and I unhook Zeb's leash and I open the gate and he happily runs to the other dogs. But as I'm closing the gate, I hear Zeb yelp in pain, and I know that something's wrong. So I slam the gate closed and I drop my coffee and I run over to him. And one of the other dogs is standing on top of him and he has Zeb pinned on the ground and he's trying to lock his jaw around Zeb's neck. And I could see the terror in Zeb's eyes as he struggles to fight back. I'm now fully alert and the adrenaline is pumping. The other dog's owner joins me as I kick and scream and try to pull her dog off of Zeb. And after what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a few seconds, we managed to separate the 2 dogs. But as I was trying to get Zeb out of the dog park, the dog pounces on him again. And again, we're able to pry its jaws off of Zeb's neck. And this time I put my body in between Zeb and the other dog and I push him out of the park. And once we're safely outside, I have a chance to look down and assess the damage. And Zeb is lucid and he doesn't seem to be bleeding too much, but his scalp is torn from ear to ear. I could see his skull and there's a bunch of loose skin hanging from his head. I know that I have to get him to the vet as soon as possible, but we're 7 blocks from my house and Zeb is too big for me to carry him. So I yell at the other dog owner and I give her my phone number and I tell her that I'm going to take him to the emergency vet in Berkeley. And I tell her that she has to call me. And we take off running and we run up MLK and we run down 40th Street. And we make it back to my place and we jump in my truck and I'm running red lights up Market Street. And I'm telling Zeb that everything is going to be okay. We get to the vet's office and I rush him in and they see the head wound and take him back immediately. And then the adrenaline slows down and my emotions kick in. And I can't fill out the intake form because my hand won't stop shaking. And I'm sitting in the waiting room and I'm thinking about Zeb. And I'm thinking about the 9 years that we've spent together. And I'm thinking of how he has seen me through a really rough divorce, 2 big moves, and many bad decisions. And I'm thinking about all the good times we had, all of those camping trips, going out hiking, taking long runs. And I wonder if this is how it ends. And as I'm sitting there, the other dog's owner walks in. And she's shaking and she's crying and she's telling me how sorry she is that this happened. And I give her a hug and she gives the vet her credit card and she tells them to charge whatever it'll take. About an hour later, the vet comes out and she tells me that Zeb is lucky, that all of that extra skin around his neck probably saved his life. And she's confident that they'll be able to stitch up the head wound and that he'll fully recover. And I'm able to take him home later that day. A couple of months later, on Zeb's 10th birthday, I throw him a party and I invite all my friends. And I invite Summer, the other dog owner. And when she shows up that afternoon, Zeb greets her like he does all my friends, tail wagging, butt wiggling, the biggest smile on his face. And I say a toast, and we raise our glasses to Zeb. Grateful that he's still here with us, and grateful that he's still a lover, not a fighter. Thank you.
Amos Stoltzfus, everyone. Give it up.
Yay, Zeb.
Wonderful.
Great job.
Wonderful. Right. Well, this was a wonderful night. I want to thank all the storytellers. I want to thank all of the audience. Thank you for coming. I will just say, if this looks like fun, it is. And there will be more classes. So you can check out my website, CoreyRosen.com, for information about upcoming classes, or my book, which is the sponsor of the show. But mainly, I want to just thank this incredible group of people, Algiin, Genevieve, John, Ellen, Amos, and Kate, of course, for just great storytelling tonight. So thank you all for sharing your stories and your gifts with us.
Good job. Thank you, Corey.
Thank you, Corey.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Corey.
And thank you,
Good
family
job.
and friends.
You guys were awesome.
Great.
Thank you. Keep
Thanks,
doing
everyone,
those
for coming.
stories.
Thank
Yes,
you. You
keep telling
too.
stories. Wherever you are in the world, please keep telling stories. It keeps us together. Have a good night.
Good night.
All right.
Thank you.